Back at the state home, she expects Sarge to escort her straight to the headmaster's office. Instead, he marches her to a classroom where the rest of the squad is waiting for their written test. She slips into a seat next to Logan. Every eye is on her. Logan is frowning, puzzled and worried at the same time. The proctor watches the clock so they can start the test on the hour. 5 agonizing minutes to listen to a fly buzzing at the window. On her other side, Kip's bandaged ankle is propped on the chair in front of him. Pex is conspicuously absent. Then, too low for Logan to hear, Kip says, "Guess who's in the infirmary because of you?" She refuses to look at him, keeping her eyes on the proctor. He sings softly, "Someone's in trouble." As the proctor sets the tests face down on their desks, Brooklyn takes one last look at the other members of her squad. Maybe some of the girls and younger guys are looking at her with admiration for having stood up for herself. Maybe one of the older ones gives her a small nod of approval. Most are disgusted with her, though. Her skin crawls. This is Reese's fault. If she hadn't been in the stands, Brooklyn wouldn't have pushed herself so hard. She would have realized the diplomatic benefit of taking third place in the race and not challenging Kip's asinine pride. At the thought, someone in a practice room upstairs starts playing arpeggios. Brooklyn hopes Reese's fingers malfunction during her recital, and that the whole audience spits at her. After the written test, Brooklyn only wants to scour the sweat, gunpowder, and spit off her skin. But even before she can strip down in her dorm, someone raps at the door. She thinks it might be one of the dorm guardians to hurry her along since she's the last one out. It would mean she'd have to go to lunch reeking and take her shower later. But no, it's just another ward. The absolute last one Brooklyn cares to see. "Can I come in?" Risa asks. "What, are you lost?" Brooklyn says. "Isn't your room in the south wing?" "North," Risa says. "Good, I'm glad you're not lost," Brooklyn tells her. "Now get lost." Instead, Risa steps in, moving closer to Brooklyn. I know it was you yesterday." Brooklyn won't look at her. She grabs her soap and a towel for the shower. "I don't know what you're talking about. I saw your reflection in the dance mirror. I thought you might turn me in for being there on a Sunday. Who says who says I still won't?" She tries to push past Risa, but unlike most other girls, Risa is more of an obstacle than a turnstile. When Risa's shoulder doesn't give, Brooklyn stumbles, dropping the soap. "What the hell's wrong with you?" She's about to order Risa to pick it up, but Risa does so of her own volition, holding it out to Brooklyn. Brooklyn takes it reluctantly. "What is it you want from me?" "Just to thank you for listening," Risa says. "None of the other kids care enough to listen. Half the time, the teachers don't care enough." Brooklyn shrugs. "You're good at something," she admits, "and maybe I got some culture. Maybe I'm not the bonehead buff you think I am." "I do not think that," Risa says, then grins. "Well, maybe a little." Brooklyn finds herself fighting her own grin. "And maybe you're just a little bit of a stuck-up bitch who thinks she's better than the rest of us." It feels good to say that to Risa's face after all these years. Then Risa nods and says, "Maybe sometimes I do act that way." Brooklyn isn't sure how to take Risa's acceptance of her rebuke. It was always so satisfying to hate her. This is a new territory, uneasy territory. "I've seen the way you sign with that deaf boy," Risa says. Brooklyn tenses up, sensing an insult, or at least a dig. "That's none of your business." "I know, I just think it's cool that you learned how to do it. It's a talent." "A useless one," Brooklyn growls. "There are barely any deaf people out there to use it with. Auditory tracks are cheap, but you still learned it for the kids in here. Maybe just for that one boy." The fact that she's right, the fact that she can read Brooklyn so easily, makes her uncomfortable. When people know you, that knowledge can easily be turned against you. Brooklyn starts wondering if there's something she knows, or could find out, about Risa that she could use against her. Not that she would, but like old world nukes, a balance of power could save their little world from nuclear winter. And then Risa says, In a way, it's not all that different from playing the piano. I mean, you use your hands to create meaning, just like I do. Brooklyn just stares at her. What is her angle? What does she want? Are we done here? Because I really do have to take a shower. Yeah, we're done, Risa tells her. I just wanted to thank you for liking my music and to congratulate you on taking second place today. Why were you even there? Shouldn't you have been practicing for your test? The practice rooms were all taken, Risa said with a shrug. Besides, you stopped to listen to me. I thought I'd return the favor. Risa turns to go, and not wanting to let her have the last word, Brooklyn says, You made 3 mistakes. Risa turns back to her. Excuse me? When you were playing, I heard 3 mistakes. But if you fix those 3, it'll be amazing. Risa's smile is genuine, almost dazzling. Brooklyn finds Thor waiting for her just outside the cafeteria. You scared me, Thor signs. Why? Did you think I got unwound before lunch? Anything's possible. With Risa's interruption and her shower, Brooklyn hoped she'd be late enough to entirely miss her squad. But the lunch line is moving slowly today, and she can see they're all still there. 2 guys from her squad, having apparently inhaled their food, are the first to leave. They pass her in the hallway and as they exit the dining hall, looking like they want to shove her or worse, Thor glares at them coldly, and they move along as if intimidated by him. Funny how a skinny deaf kid has more power than hulking buffs. Another fight. Thor looks resigned as he signs. Ignoring the question, she signs back. How bad is it? This is preliminary. It's just your ranking with the buffs and academics. It doesn't include arts kids yet. They test after lunch. With her written test already computer scored, there's nothing more she can do. Her performance is her performance, both in the field and in the classroom. How bad is it? She signs again. He looks around them. Through the swinging doors, the dining hall is crowded and filled with watchful eyes, but the hallway is empty. There's no one listening, no one watching. And even if there were, no one could decipher their hand gestures. Get your lunch, Thor signs. We'll sit down and we'll talk after. But she grabs him before he can walk away and signs impatiently, Tell me now. Then she sees the tiny tick at the corner of Thor's mouth and the dread in his eyes. He hesitates for a moment more. Then, finally, he levels the news at her. Blackjack, he signs. As of now, you're number 21. She flattens herself against the wall and slides down till her butt hits the floor. She missed the cutoff by 1. She's on the harvest list. She'll be unwound. She ignores Thor kneeling next to her and his flying fingers. Everything that happened that morning crashes over her. Thor gets in her face, shouting with his hands. We can fix this. Poor kid, she thinks. He's delusional. Nothing can fix this. Not after another fight. Not after that low marksmanship score. Still she manages one sign. How? An arts kid might bump you off the harvest list once they test, he signs. And if not, we can bump someone else on it. She frowns. How? She signs again. Leave that to me. The cafeteria is only half full for lunch, having eaten earlier. The arts kids are now beginning their marathon of tests. The hall has a different vibe without them. The sounds are more bass with sudden silence intermixed with gravel-rattling voices and squeaking benches. The deaf kids are there, sitting at the far end of the room, comfortable in their forest of signs. But Thor has left for the computer lab in his attempt to save Brooklyn's hide. He might be smart, but Brooklyn doubts he can influence the list at all. As she exits the lunch line with her tray, another random lull descends. The slower eaters in her squad sit at the table under the clock. The most offensive members have already left. There are allies, or at least those who remain neutral at the table, but still she stalls, not wanting to hear them rehash the tests, or worse, her fight with Pex. At least he's not there. She looks around for a safe harbor away from her squad. She can't sit with one of the other squads. And she can't sit with the deaf kids without Thor there. In the end, she starts for an empty table. Ironically, if Risa were here, Brooklyn might consider joining her. As much as Brooklyn has despised her, she can't deny the fragile connection that they had made in her dorm room. And all that old baggage, the things that made Brooklyn feel thorny with resentment and shame, suddenly pales with the rawness of this morning's many failures. But before she even puts her tray down, she hears, "Yo, Brooks, over here." Uh, from her squad's table. Logan waves at her. His back, his back had been to the doorway, and someone must have told him that she was there. Reluctantly, she walks to the table. Before she gets there, several of the others leave, averting their eyes, both guys and girls. But even the ones who remain don't seem too hot on sitting with the pariah of the day. And of course, there's Kip, complete with a bandaged ankle that he wears like a war wound. He sits at the end of the table with a trio of scrawny plebs. They'll fawn all over any older buff who gives them attention, and Kip always does. He gets off on being worshipped. If humans licked their wounds, she's sure Kip would make the plebs lick his. Writhing inside, but unable to escape, she sits next to Logan. "Bombed the written test," Logan announces cheerfully. She's grateful that he has taken the sting out of her own failures by starting conversation with his own. She can't help wondering whether he has really failed the written or if he is just saying that to make her feel better. Could he be on the preliminary harvest camp list too? Thor didn't tell her anyone else's standings. "You probably did better than you think," she says generously. "Don't see how." He seems to meditate briefly on it and then shrugs. "Can't do anything about it now." Not without a Thor to change his standing, she thinks, and takes a hefty bite of her burger. "At least he didn't break a fellow soldier's nose," Kip says. The burger suddenly tastes like a turd in her mouth. One of the plebs giggles nervously. Logan frowns at his best friend. "Man, that's not cool." "Yeah, well, what she did was worse." Without looking at her, Kip grabs his tray and leaves. In his dramatic departure, he forgets to limp. The plebs slink after him, one girl shooting Brooklyn a dirty look after reaching a safe distance. Logan bumps his shoulder against Brooklyn's. "Don't worry about him. He's just sore you beat him in the 2 mile. And so, what if you tripped him?" Kip needed his ego taken down a few notches anyway. Brooklyn bristles. "I told you. I didn't trip him." "You know what? It's over. It doesn't matter." But it does matter because Logan is taking Kip's word over hers. He thinks he's being magnanimous by forgiving her. But he's forgiving her for something she didn't do. Logan goes on talking, not even noticing Brooklyn's slow boil, and pecks. "I wouldn't worry about him either. He's leaving the home soon anyways. Turns 18 in 3 months. Then he looks at Brooklyn's burger. "You gonna eat that?" She finds what little appetite she had is completely gone. She puts the half-eaten burger on his plate. "All yours." Grinning, he wolfs it down and talks with his mouth full. It barely sounds like human speech. "Didn't understand a word you said." He wipes grease and mayonnaise off his mouth with his hands. "I said," he speaks with exaggerated clarity, "weird about your rifle malfunctioning." "Yeah, weird." She doesn't want to talk about it. Even thinking about it makes her sweat. No one else's did. Well, Shanda's weapon jammed a couple of times, but hers always does. "You used your own rifle, right?" "Yeah, I did." Then she thinks about it. She was the last one in line, still shaking from the encounter with Pex, and the long walk alone with the Sarge. A pleb had unlocked her weapons locker before she arrived. Had he switched it with someone else's, or worse, had someone tampered with her rifle somehow? Thoughts swirl in her head like furious hornets. After lunch, Logan slopes off to watch one of his non-buff friends in a jazz recital, a kid who tutors him in math. "You should come," he said. "Get yourself a little culture." She's about to say she likes classical music better than jazz, but decides against it. "Sorry, music isn't my thing." Then one of the other kids mimes the breaking of her recorder, which is apparently legendary, and it gives her all the excuses she needs to slip away and find Thor. But once she's alone, Her natural paranoia rises. Had the pleb at the weapons cart given her a bad rifle? Before she knows it, she's turning for the stairwell that leads to the basement weapons cage. She keys in the digital lock, which she always knows, no matter how often they change it, and takes the stairs 3 at a time. A different code opens the door at the bottom of the stairs, and through long practice, she ducks her head to avoid the camera. The basement is a warren of storage areas. An atmosphere of old paper, decaying rubber, and petroleum permeates the place. It's colder than upstairs, but not by much. The armory is in the back. She passes the freight elevator and the long row of file rooms behind more locked doors. She used information in those files in trade for goods and favors. She could probably find something in there that would save her now, but there's not enough time. Too bad she hadn't found a hideous scandal that could have kept her safe until she turns 18. If she survives this harvesting, that will be her new priority. The weapons are stored in rows behind rigid cages of steel bars and chicken wire. She stalls on the north side of the armory, hearing a rattling inside. Between the third and the fourth rows, she sees someone standing at a workbench. An overhead lamp lights him in the bench. His back is to her, and he looks like the pleb who was responsible for the weapons lockers at the rifle range. A wiry kid with nasty knuckles and large ears. He was also part of Kip's entourage at lunch. 2 lockers are open on the bench. The pleb is disassembling a rifle. She's too far away to identify either of the lockers as hers. She clutches the cage bars, straining to see. In its concrete foot, the steel squeaks against her weight, and she reflexively backs away into the shadows. "Who's there?" the pleb calls. His voice squeaks like the cage bar. Soundlessly, she flees down the long corridor, then ducks down a side hall when she hears the ponderous opening of the cage door. She finds the second stairwell, not daring to return to the main one. She fumbles the exit code and is sure the camera caught her profile, leaning closer to the keypad. Can they identify her from a dim silhouette? Just one more thing she wishes she didn't have to think about. She heads for Thor's small bedroom and is grateful he isn't there. He might have talked her out of her rampant paranoia, and she wants to let it range free. Her thoughts buzz angry and bewildered. Did the pleb sabotage her gun and is now hiding the evidence of his tampering? And if it was sabotage, who ordered it? A pleb that age wouldn't act alone. This would have been planned long ahead of time, so it couldn't be Kip. Or could it? He'd never liked her, even before his catastrophic fall on the track. Maybe it was the Sarge. The man always seemed to have it in for her. He treats her as if she's not a true buff, no matter how well she scores on tests and performs on the field, and it can't be just because of her fighting. The lieutenant couldn't be involved in the conspiracy, could he? Maybe the Sarge, but not the lieutenant. She wants to think of at least one person besides Thor. She wants to think that at least one person besides Thor is on her side. Logan doesn't count. His protective power expired the moment he chose to believe Kip instead of her. Maybe she'll talk to the lieutenant about the rifle. Maybe he'll treat her fairly, and maybe Thor can keep her off of the harvest list this time. But what about next time? She'll need to scrape deep for information that's so awful it'll keep her safe for the next 2 years. From now on, she must protect herself, no matter who gets unwound because of it. The recitals are finished. The art gallery's closed. The committees are tallying the art kids' final scores. As Brooklyn heads for the staff offices, she has to step around a group of art kids huddled in the stairwell. 2 are crying. She thinks she hears Risa whispering, an edge of despair in her voice, but Brooklyn is on a mission and hurries past them. Since she has time before Thor can run the results, she decides to see her lieutenant. No harm in currying favor in this final hour. His office is near the headmaster's. Brooklyn uses covert measures to slip past the headmaster's office, although she hasn't been called in to answer for the fight with Pex. She doesn't want the headmaster to conduct an impromptu reprimand on a chance meeting. Sir? She taps lightly on the lieutenant's open door. His expression darkens, seeing her. Yes? No welcome, no warm in his voice. A moment, sir? Maybe this isn't a good idea. A moment. His nod at the chair before his desk is as crisp as his shirt. Best to get it over with. Sir, I believe someone tampered with my rifle on the range this morning. His jaw shuts. And do you have proof? No proof, sir, but suspicions that can be... He waves her to silence. His eyes glint coldly. Are you making an unfounded accusation against a member of your squad? Sir? Because soldiers don't do that. No matter what, the squad is your family, and its members are your brothers and sisters. Do you have any inkling of what that means? Yes, sir. She can barely hear herself, so she clears her throat and repeats loudly. Yes, sir. He leans slightly forward, his words still frosty. I can lower your score further. Is that what you want? No, sir. You understand what it means to be a team player. Yes, sir. He nods and spins his chair back to his computer. Then remember that before you waste my time again. Dismissed. In the computer lab, Brooklyn's left leg jitters. She and Thor are alone. It's late afternoon, but after a marathon of testing, no one's working on anything mundane like homework. She hears muffled shouts from the playground below. The littler kids are oblivious, but everyone else is shell-shocked. If Thor looked morose before, he looks positively miserable now. Remember, he signs, we can fix this. He slides to the left so she can get a better look at the screen. Her mouth goes dry and her leg sits still. She's still 21, and Logan is just above the cutoff at 22. I can switch your names, Thor signs, like it's nothing. Then she sees the name right before Logan's. Number 23, Risa. Did she flub her piano recital so badly that she's come within 2 spots of being unwound? Even in the shock of finding her name there, Brooklyn can't help but take a little bit of pleasure in it, too. Did Little Miss Perfect have stage fright? Or maybe she got sabotaged, too. Then she thinks about how Risa stopped by her dorm before lunch. How had she acted like they could be friends? Of course, they would never. But now they were no longer enemies. Her thoughts racing, she signs, Can we substitute any name for mine? Thor shakes his head. Got to be someone very close to you on the list, or it'll be a huge red flag. They'll know the list was compromised, and they'll figure out who did it. The last thing Brooklyn wants is to get Thor in trouble. Sure, he can't be unwound, but there are other punishments. It would be simplest to bump out Logan, but can she do that to him? It wouldn't exactly be looking out for her squad brother, would it? She points to Risa's name. Could we use her? Thor considers it. He knows Brooklyn's history with Risa, but doesn't bring it up. Instead, he slowly signs, We could. Then he waits, leaving the decision entirely up to Brooklyn. When do I have to decide? Brooklyn asks. I need to access the mainframe to make the switch, and I can't get near it until the Eagle takes off. Brooklyn glances at the hook-nosed computer room attendant. This one is much more attentive than the weekend attendant. The Eagle eyes them with even more suspicion than he does the other kids. Apparently, signing is even more suspect than whispering. He goes off duty at 5:30, Thor tells him. That gives you an hour to decide, but don't be late. The results become final at 6, and if you miss that window, you're as good as unwound. It feels heady yet horrible to hold the power of life and death, or, if you believe the juvenile authorities' propaganda, living whole or living divided. But either way, it's an end. She shivers. Better someone else's than hers. I'll meet you back here in an hour, she tells him. The stairwells are full of kids seeking out friends on other floors. Everyone needs someone to listen, as they wail about poor performances or exult over triumphs. No one understands the true stakes. No ward except she and Thor knows the extra harvesting this year. But every ward knows that a bad ranking could eventually lead them to unwinding. Feeling claustrophobic, Brooklyn heads for the playground to think, but dorm guardians are setting up tables there too. There. Setting up tables there. Too bad, because in a rare moment it's actually quiet. No basketball on the court, no kids playing hopscotch, no one on the rusted swing set. She puts two and two together and remembers the ice cream Logan had told her about. They'll all be getting a surprise treat tonight, and everyone will know something is up when they announce it. They only give ice cream on a weekday when something truly bad happens. The last time was on the day before another batch of kids was put on a bus to be unwound. Sitting on a sun-warmed bench, she figures that even with the dorm guardians chatting about where to put the napkin dispensers, she isn't going to find a quieter spot at the state home. She closes her eyes and against visual distractions and leans into the dappled sunlight beneath the spreading maple tree. She lets the rustling leaves envelop her. In a few years, making life or death decisions will be commonplace for her. On the battlefield, she'll kill enemies to protect friends. As she advances, she will eventually have to choose which friends will die to protect their platoon. Her orders will end the lives of innocents caught in a crossfire or buried in a bombing raid. The decision she makes in the next hour will prepare her for those times, just as fitness and marksmanship training prepare her physically. She's making herself a better soldier, she tells herself, a better leader. Leaving herself on the harvest list is not an option. Having a friend who knows how to alter the ranking algorithm gives her this advantage, this weapon. If you are attacked, then you defend yourself. This is her defending herself. Having had to let her thoughts settle, the choice of who will take her place on the list is obvious. Risa is smart and talented. She shouldn't be punished for having a bad day. On the other hand, Logan might be a good friend, but he's not too bright, and he's only an average buff. It's only a matter of time before they unwind him anyways. She considers carefully what the lieutenant said to her. No matter what, the squad is your family. He meant that even if it costs the lives of others worthier than her fellow soldiers, her comrades come first. Someday that may be true for her. To save her comrades, she may one day need to level a museum, aim her rifle at a poet, or gun down an entire orchestra. But not today. Today she will choose to save the life of a piano player instead of a buff. At 5 o'clock, factory whistle sounds in the distance, and she chuckles. In the end, she made her decision in less than 30 minutes. She has time to change in the Piranha River shirt Logan gave her. It seems a nice thing to do for him before he's unwound. Her Piranha River shirt is missing. She'd worn it yesterday, but not for long. She folded it and put it in her nightstand drawer. It isn't there now. Did someone take it? Fervorously, she goes through her laundry hamper. The stink of dirty clothes sticks to her hands and fills her nose. She reaches the bottom of the hamper. Not there. Someone has taken it. She immediately remembers the other time when she accused Risa of stealing her shirt and the humiliation that followed, but tries to brush the thought away. Naomi and two friends of hers enter. Brooklyn's anger boils over. Naomi was jealous of that shirt yesterday. Of course she pilfered it. Brooklyn launches herself at Naomi, shoving her against the wall, her forearm compressing Naomi's throat. Another girl shrieks, but Brooklyn's menacing growl overrides her loud protests. Where's my shirt? Naomi is unable to breathe. Her eyes are wild, and her fingernails score bloody lines in Brooklyn's skin. Bucking frantically under Brooklyn's forearm, Naomi manages to overset them both, and they crash sideways onto the laundry hamper. Are you crazy? Naomi vaults away from Brooklyn. You could have killed me. Brooklyn pushes the hamper away and starts at Naomi again, but one of the other girls, a hefty buff from Squad C, inserts herself between them. She's almost as big as Pex. The memory of that fight sombers Brooklyn, but her anger still simmers. Give me back my Piranha River shirt, Brooklyn snarls. I know you took it. I didn't touch your shirt, jerk. Naomi looks in the mirror, her fingers tenderly probing her reddening neck. Wait till I tell him what you did to me. Jeez, I'm gonna have bruises. Is that your missing top? The other girl says, pointing to a short wadded up on the floor behind the upended hamper. Shocked, Brooklyn stares, hands shaking. She picks it up. She sees the familiar insignia against the gray-green background. PR, Piranha River. Naomi glares at Brooklyn. I heard about your fight with that boy this morning. Then you attack me? Man, when they're done with you, you're gonna be blood and bones on the floor. Let it go, Naomi. In equal astonishment, Brooklyn and Naomi stare at the buff from Squad C. The large girl shrugs. Dorm guardians and the headmasters are in a foul mood today. They won't care whose fault it is. If you don't end this now, they'll punish you both. Naomi glurs and exhales explosively and kicks Brooklyn. She's an arts kid, so it doesn't hurt much. Grabbing her shower kit, Naomi and her friends slam out of the room. Still holding her Piranha River shirt, Brooklyn studies the buff uncertainly. Thanks. I don't know why you did that, but thanks. Soldiers gotta stick together, she says. And besides, Pex deserved to have his nose broken. The girl heads off toward the shower, and thoughtfully Brooklyn smooths out the shirt. The Squad C buff made her feel kind of bad for bumping Logan, a fellow soldier, to the harvest list. Not bad enough to change her mind, just enough to make her feel miserable about it. Even so, her reasoning on who lives whole or divided still stands. Her hand pauses from trying to de-wrinkle the shirt. She accused Risa of stealing her shirt when they were 7. Was she mistaken then, too? Brooklyn's skin prickles considering how every memory of the event and everything she felt about Piano Girl could be wrong. She shakes away the thought. What Risa did afterward in front of a crowd of other wards was worse. And when she stopped by to talk to Brooklyn today, it showed that Risa was big enough to forget about childhood squabbles. Brooklyn deciding not to bump Risa onto the harvest list shows she's matured too. She knows she can't get to the computer room too early or the attendant will be suspicious. Best to wait after he's gone. Brooklyn decides she'll catch Thor in his room and tell him her decision rather than waiting. But as she passes the showers, she overhears Naomi blabbing about their stupid little fight. It infuriates Brooklyn, but for once she controls her temper. Brooklyn was admittedly wrong, and although it's never been in her nature to apologize, perhaps doing so will finally bring some good karma her way. Besides, a quick "I'm sorry, Naomi" might stem off further retribution and any disciplinary action that might follow. So she'll swallow her pride and apologize. Then she'll hurry off to find Thor. She moves towards the line of girls in the tilted bathing area, waiting their turn. Steam rolls from the showers like a hot fog, leaving the tiles slick. Brooklyn approaches Naomi, already having formed and practiced an apology in her mind, but she never gets there. Instead, she encounters someone else in line. Oh, hey. Brooklyn looks up. It's Risa. Hi, Brooklyn says, and though she already knows, she asks, how'd your recital go? Risa grimaces. Awful. I'm hoping they award points for doing a difficult piece. They didn't, Brooklyn could say. She almost feels affection for a Piano Girl, as a lifeguard might feel about someone she's saved from drowning. Maybe they will, she said instead. Risa moves to the sink next to Naomi and opens her toiletry kit. Catching sight of Naomi's sore neck, she asks, what happened to you? Naomi pulls on the neck of her t-shirt and mutters, nothing. Now that Brooklyn is there, She's not so quick to talk about it, and Brooklyn wishes Risa would just let it go, but she doesn't. No, really, Risa gently tugs Naomi's collar aside. That looks nasty. You should go see the nurse. Then Risa says in a low voice, Was it one of the boys? You should report it. Naomi jerks away and finally glares at Brooklyn. She just about strangled me for no reason. That's what happened. But the nurse would have to report it, and I don't want to get into trouble. Risa looks at Brooklyn in astonishment. Brooklyn is aware that the room has grown quiet except for the sound of the showers. Everyone is staring at her. Why? Risa asks. It doesn't matter, Brooklyn mumbles. She looks toward the entrance, hoping to make an escape, but there are too many girls blocking the way. All she needs is to push past them and send someone sprawling on the slippery tiles. They'd say she did it on purpose. She accused me of stealing her shirt, Naomi says, but it was behind the laundry hamper the whole time. Risa looks between Naomi and Brooklyn and then bursts out laughing. Not again. Feeling heat rush into her face, Brooklyn says quickly, Let's just drop it. It was a mistake, okay? Then a girl behind Brooklyn asks Risa, What do you mean again? Brooklyn's heart is hampering. She can't bear to hear the story and her shame spoken aloud. When we were little, Brooklyn thought I'd taken a shirt of hers too, Risa said with a gentle smile that might also be a little calculated. She shoved me. I shoved her back. No biggie. Don't tell them, Brooklyn. Brooklyn feels like she's on fire, and she's realizing she's signing. A lot of good that'll do. She balls her hands into fists, forcing them down to her side. And then another girl says what Risa doesn't. Didn't you spit on her? That girl asks. It's like ants beneath Brooklyn's skin. Yeah, I remember, the girl says. You pinned her on the ground and you spit in her face. It was a classic. Risa cocks her head. Yeah, I guess I did. What can I say? Kids do dumb things. And the other girls laugh. The brainless, heartless twitter of birds. But it's not their laughter that gets to Brooklyn. It's the slow smile that creases Risa's face. A mocking smile. A smile that says, I was better than you then, and I'm better than you now, and I'll always be one rung above you, ready to step on your face, or spit on it. It was a long time ago, Brooks, Risa says. Yeah, right, whatever. Brooklyn turns to leave, this time not caring who she topples to get out. No one falls, because the curtain of girls parts for her. Minutes later, she opens the computer lab door. Thor sits alone at the mainframe, no attendant in sight. The clock on the wall above him reads 5:41. He simply signs who. Brooklyn spells it out so there can be no confusion. Risa. Or R-I-S-A. Risa. That evening in the crowded playground, Brooklyn Ward eats ice cream standing near Logan. He snickers at something Kip says, while the ice cream is still being served. A messenger from the headmaster's office emerges from the building and passes out notes to 21 wards. Brooklyn thinks, if I ran things here, I'd at least wait till they've finished their ice cream. But compassion doesn't live at State Home. One of the kids who gets a note is standing near them, Samson. Brooklyn remembers that he's number 2 on the harvest list. Supposedly he's a genius in math, but is also a notorious underachiever. Genius serves no one if it never makes it out of your head. What do you got there? Kip asks. Headmaster wants to see me. Samson stuffs the note in his pocket and starts working on his ice cream again. What about? Logan asks. He puts his arm around Brooklyn and she allows it. Samson shrugs. Maybe someone wants to adopt me. They all laugh. Kip jokes that maybe Samson won the lottery, and then everyone offers the idea on how Samson should spend his winnings. Samson only grins, the loser that he is, enjoying his rare moment in the spotlight. Brooklyn says nothing, her gaze roaming through this crowd of kids. Near the swing set, Risa stands encircled by some other arts kids. She stares at the note in one hand with her ice cream cone forgotten dripping on her other hand. The smile from before is now gone from her face, robbed from her. Soon she will be gone, and no one will tell the story of what happened when they were 7, because no one talks about harvested kids. Brooklyn's gaze passes over Risa to where the deaf kids sit underneath the playground's one tree. She catches Thor's eye. His leg shields his left hand from the other deaf kids, and he signs, "Okay." Instead of signing back, she just gives him a small nod, leaning against Logan's brawny arm. Brooklyn lets her gaze shift through the crowd. After 21 are taken, her rank will leave her deep in the red for harvesting. Not a problem. She has 6 months to improve her rating. That should be easy. Once she's taken care of that pleb who switched her rifle, once she digs up some nice blackmail dirt she can use against someone who can secure her safety, as for Risa Ward, she will disappear as if she never had been born, and no great loss. It's not like she would have changed the world. As Brooklyn looks over the kids in the yard, she wonders who will be on the next list, or who she might put there in order to save herself. In a world where kids like her have no power, it's nice to know there are still some things she can control. Who will she switch next time?